This is the Master Brewers Podcast, brought to you by the Master Brewers Association of the Americas, a volunteer organization dedicated to continually improving the products and processes of our membership since 1887.
Okay, let's go!
Master Brewers brings you interviews with the industry's best and brightest in brewing science, technology, and operations. All right, welcome back to the Master Brewers Podcast. I'm John Bryce, and here with me is my colleague, friend, and co-host, Mark Sammartino. Mark and I are joined by John Edwards today. We are recording live from the World Brewing Congress in Denver, Colorado, and John's got a great poster that he's presented here at the conference. And first of all, John, welcome, and thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Great. So if you wouldn't mind, why don't you tell us a little bit about your work and what your poster is all about?
Well, I have a contract analytical lab in Connecticut, and we specialize in NMR spectroscopy, which is a technique that most chemists use to figure out chemical structures. It has very specific fingerprints for small molecules. And so over the years, we serve all industry sectors, not really brewing so much until recently.
But brewing's the most fun out of all of them, right?
Brewing is definitely the most fun out of all of them, for sure. This is true. And so basically all this information that you have on small molecules is completely, it's applicable to any beverage. So from beer to cider to wine to sake or mead. So we started looking at them and pulling out quantitative fingerprints of alcohols, organic acids, amino acids, and the malt chemistry. And then at the end, you can kind of add them all together and get a nutritional label. And so we've kind of been doing this ourselves in-house, doing projects with a brewery here, a cidery there, typically doing it for free to kind of get some idea of where we're useful and try and get some stories to tell about where this technique might become useful, because it's considered high-end and a lot of people don't even really think about using it. It's not really high-end. It's kind of gotten a reputation that it doesn't really deserve. And so, I ended up joining a MBAA and ASBC, and I think I joined BA as well as like a single member type of thing, not as an organization. Mm-hmm. And I've been going to meetings and presenting and just talking to people and trying to figure out where this technique might fit.
I was looking, you contacted me a while back, and I was looking at some of the spectrums that you provided, and I was intrigued at the broad range of molecules that you can actually pull out. And to me, it offered an extremely nice tool to look at when you varied the process to see how it might potentially impact your yeast. Yep. And you could actually look before and after and see actually how the outcomes of your fermentation were there. So if you're playing around with the process and trying to figure out if you've got a yeast problem or if you've got a water problem or something of that nature, this might be a really good technique in order to help you try to figure those things out.
Right. I mean, you can follow kinetics even, like if you want to watch over the course of several days what is happening to the fermentable sugars, for example.
That I think is probably one of the things that might be the coolest thing to do.
Right. But then in barrel aging, things like that, what's happening with the lactic, acetic, succinic. Yep. The other things you can see is if somebody's adding like cocoa nibs, you can see the theobromine from the chocolate, which is the alkaloid. And if they throw in coffee beans, you can see the caffeine. And so you can, I don't know that you can, somebody was joking with me that you could probably do this and then figure out somebody's recipe, from scratch. But you can't because, you don't know how long they had to steep the cocoa nibs and this and that to get that level of theobromine out. But you can see these things, and there's a lot of applicability. And the one thing we don't see is all the very low-lying, and some of them are very powerful flavor components, like anything that's like low ppm values or ppb values, like hop oils and things like that, in the finished beers themselves. We just can't see it because we're seeing ethanol at 12%, 15% in wines and in some heavy beers, and we're seeing things down in the tens and hundreds of ppms at the other level in the same experiment But to then go down even lower, some of those bigger signals from the bigger components are kind of obliterating what you can see and blinding it. So we haven't played around with things like there's certain like cartridges you can buy with silica in them, and you pass a big volume of beer through them, and they will trap these smaller molecules like DMS. You can buy them specifically to go after certain chemistries, and then so you get a high concentration on that column and then backflush it. So HPLC people and mass spec people at the meeting do similar things. We haven't done any of that, just because I haven't really been driven, people are asking me, well, what's the VDK level in my beer and things like that. I'm trying to think what else we could say.
Well, I think it's a matter of adapting to the needs of the industry first, get a feel for where it's applicable. But I think, as I said, that when I originally talked to you, the spectrum of molecules that you can look at is vast. So it's not like trying to pick out a specific group of esters or amino acids. You get them all, and all in one profile.
Right.
And to me, that is very valuable when you look at trying to do change in a process, and not necessarily looking at monitoring your process unless you're like looking at yeast kinetics and how an ester profile may progress over the course of a fermentation, et cetera. So I'm not 100% sure, at least today, from my standpoint, it's not real beneficial for looking at maturation of beer right now, but probably more so towards, does it fit the flavor profile I want it to have?
Right. Well, I'd like to find out if that's actually true with respect to things like barrel aging of sours.
Yeah, I think that's different.
You're going to see, that's a whole different story, right? I don't know that we would ever see things like staling or things like that.
But you might be able to see other molecules pop out that indicate that sort of change, or a change in the aldehyde.
We've actually seen not so much looking at the small molecules, but looking at the residual malt that's in the beers. If you were doing something like you were making a beer with Saccharomyces and you get a certain attenuation and you get a certain distribution of what's left of the malt, which tends to be all the corners and the branching points of the dextrin.
Right.
If you then say, I'm now going to finish this with Brett, the Brett goes in there and nibbles away. It will go through corners of the dextrins. It doesn't care. It's not like amylase that kind of gets to a point and says, I'm not going to make any more maltose, I'm just going to stop. It just keeps nibbling away. And you really see big changes in the distributions. And I've not had any kind of interaction with people that are doing this kind of work to be able to then say, well, can you kind of get a fingerprint of there's been Brettanomyces activity in here, or there's been Pediococcus activity in here, and does that give a specific look to the residual malt in like a pale ale category or some other category that you're looking at?
I can think of a couple brewers that are coming to mind right off the bat, and I won't mention them here, but I'm sure that if they're listening, they'll be ringing your phone here shortly.
Well, John, you mentioned that you joined MBA fairly recently. As you got into this field. What so far has been your favorite member benefit? Obviously, we've got things such as all the vast knowledge of repository of TQ articles and stuff. You've got the networking opportunities at events like this. You've got the the community site where there's a lot of exchange of information going on. What have you enjoyed the most thus far out of your membership?
I can see that being a member of the organization, the network aspect of it, keying into people like Mark, who you can say, I can do this, and he thinks about it, and he'll say, as he just said, I can think of somebody over here that might find that useful, and somebody here. And that's where I'm lost by myself. I'm a chemist. I'm in the American Chemical Society. I'm in a bunch of other societies, but no brewing.
Right.
And I really don't know how to sell myself and how to, get myself out there and noticed. And so I think, if you can use an organization where you talk to people, the networking that you can do, but then also some of the people in the organization that can almost like act as a clearinghouse in a way where you say, I can do this, and they say, well, I know somebody who has that problem, you can help them. Yeah. That's really powerful.
Yeah, that's great.
So I'm not really looking at it from like the process side. One thing I did learn here, I know this is an MBAA podcast, but the ASBC is more of the laboratory side.
Correct.
And So there's an aspect of the
We still love
MBAA.
the ASBC.
Yes, I know, but there's the MBAA. I'm not sure that the process side of it. Although I did a lot of process NMR in refineries and chemical plants, actually sticking NMR machines into refineries and doing gasoline analysis with them. The thing with beer is I don't see NMR ever being an online tool. So on the processing side of MBAA.
Sure.
But it's interesting to see that there's that aspect of it, because I also dealt with a lot of process control in refineries and chemical plants. And it's really interesting to see almost the same level of control and complexity in some of the vendors here and their equipment.
Yeah.
So
that's great. Well, John, thanks a lot for joining us today. It was really nice to have you on.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoy the rest of your time here at the World Brewing Congress.
I appreciate it. I'm going to enjoy it very much.
All right.
Thank you for being with us. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you. Take care.
Thanks.
John's poster is available as part of the 2016 World Brewing Congress proceedings, and your brewing library isn't complete without a copy of these monumental proceedings. Click Store from mbaa.com, where you can find the conference proceedings and browse the full contents of more than 250 presentations and posters. The World Brewing Congress proceedings are only $55 with your member discount. If you're not already a Master Brewers member, use discount code 4094 to save $15 on professional membership if you join by December 31st.
Just like that one day, like everyone.
Next week in episode 15, we begin a multi-part series about malt with industry veteran Joe Hertrick. Joe gets things started by simplifying the understanding of malt certificates of analysis.
Came around then, since there's that one thing that I should have told.
And the simplification then begs the question, if we are looking at things that say the same thing within a bundle, why can't we focus on just the very best measurement in each bundle and greatly reduce the focus on a certificate of analysis?
My heart full of rage. Well, I can't get stuck, I can't be losing too much. And then I'm heading out to any other place.